The year is 1613. While Shakespeare writes his final plays in England and the Jamestown colony struggles to survive in America, a lone ship embarks from a remote port in northern Japan on a journey that will rewrite history. On board are 180 men, led by a low-ranking but determined samurai named Hasakura Sunigaga. Their destination, the Vatican, on the other side of the world. Their mission, to open a new trade route with the Spanish Empire and meet the most powerful man in Europe, the Pope. This is the incredible, almost forgotten story of the first Japanese embassy to the West, a tale of courage-culture clash and a diplomatic quest that would take samurai across the vast Pacific, through the jungles of Mexico and into the heart of European power. How did this happen, and why has this epic voyage been largely lost to time? Let's uncover the legend of the Kaiko Embassy. To understand this audacious journey, we must go back to the dawn of Japan's Edo period. The nation had just emerged from over a century of civil war. The new shogun, Tokugawa Ieyasu, sought stability and economic prosperity. At the same time, a powerful regional lord, or daimyo, named Date Masamune, ruled over the northern domain of Sendi. Known as the One-Eyed Dragon, Masamune was ambitious, brilliant, and open to new ideas. He saw immense potential in trading directly with Nueva Esparta, or modern-day Mexico, the hub of Spain's lucrative silver trade. There was just one problem. Japan's official policy strictly limited foreign contact. But Masamune had a secret weapon, a Franciscan missionary named Luis Sotelo, who had dreams of making Japan a Christian nation. Together, they hatched a daring plan. They would build a Western-style galleon, the first of its kind ever constructed in Japan, and send a delegation to both the King of Spain and the Pope. Their official purpose was to request trade and more missionaries. The unofficial goal? To put Date Masamune on the world map. Leading this incredible expedition was Hasakura. He wasn't a famous general or a high-ranking noble. He was a mid-level retainer, a veteran of the Japanese invasions of Korea, known for his steadfastness and quiet resolve. Perhaps it was his unassuming nature that made him the perfect choice for a mission that required diplomacy, not just brute force. His selection was a testament to Masamune's trust in his character. On October 28, 1613, Hasakura and his delegation set sail from Sukunura Harbor aboard their newly christened ship, the San Juan Bautista, or the Date Marie. The ship itself was a marvel, a 500-ton galleon built in just 45 days using local timber and Japanese shipbuilding expertise, guided by Spanish sailors. As the Japanese coastline faded into the distance, none of the men on board could have imagined the world they were about to encounter. Their first stop, after 3 grueling months crossing the Pacific, was a place no samurai had ever set foot before. Acapulco, in Nueva Esparta. Imagine the scene. Samurai in traditional armor and swords, walking through the bustling streets of a Spanish colonial port, surrounded by Spanish merchants, indigenous peoples, and African slaves. The culture shock must have been immense. The local population was astonished by these visitors from a land they knew only through rumor. Chronicles from the time describe the Japanese with fascination, noting their dignity, their strange clothing, and the sharp blades of their katana. Hasakura and his men were celebrated, but their journey was far from over. From Acapulco, they began a treacherous overland trek across Mexico to Veracruz on the Atlantic coast. This was a land of dense jungles, rugged mountains, and unfamiliar diseases, a world away from the familiar landscapes of Japan. Once in Veracruz, they boarded a Spanish fleet and set sail for Europe. The Atlantic crossing was another perilous ordeal, but in January 1615, they finally arrived in Spain. They were the first official Japanese delegation to ever reach European soil. They journeyed to Madrid and were granted an audience with King Philip III. Hasakura presented his letters from Date Masamune, proposing a treaty of commerce and friendship. To show his commitment, Hasakura made a momentous decision. He was baptized in a grand ceremony at a royal monastery, taking the Christian name Felipe Francisco Hasakura. For the Spanish court, this was a huge, symbolic victory. But while they were impressed by the samurai's dignity, they were also wary. They suspected Date Masamune's true ambitions and were concerned about Dutch and English rivals gaining a foothold in Japan. The trade deal stalled. Undeterred, Hasakura and his delegation pressed on to their final destination, Rome. September 1650, they made a grand entrance into the Eternal City, parading through the streets in their exotic attire. The citizens of Rome were captivated. They were hailed as Roman senators from the East. The highlight of their entire journey came on November 3rd, when they were granted a private audience with Pope Paul V at the Vatican. Hasekura, the samurai from a distant land, knelt before the leader of the Catholic world. He presented a letter from Date Masamian, written in gold-leaf Japanese script, offering allegiance and requesting the dispatch of more missionaries. The Pope was moved by their incredible journey and devotion. He agreed to their requests and even granted Hasekura honorary Roman citizens upon incredible honor. A magnificent portrait of Hasekura was commissioned to commemorate the event, capturing his calm, resolute expression. For a brief, shining moment, it seemed the mission was a resounding success. But while Hasekura was being celebrated in Rome, the political climate back in Japan was changing dramatically. The Tokugawa shogunate, once tolerant of Christianity, had begun to see it as a destabilizing foreign influence. A nationwide ban was issued, and a brutal persecution of Christians began. The window for international trade and religious freedom was slamming shut. By the time Hasekura began his long journey home in 1617, the world he had left behind no longer existed. He traveled back through Spain, where he found the king's attitude had cooled significantly. News of the persecution in Japan had reached Europe, and the Spanish were no longer interested in a treaty. The dream of a grand trade alliance was dead. After a brief stop in the Philippines, Hasekura and the few remaining members of his delegation finally sailed back to Japan, arriving in 1620. Hasekura returned to a Japan that was now fully embracing its policy of isolation, or Sakoku. He had been gone for 7 years. He brought back incredible stories, maps, and artifacts from his global odyssey. But his master, Date Masamune, had to conform to the shogun's new anti-foreign, anti-Christian policies. What happened to Hasekura next is shrouded in mystery. Some records suggest he renounced Christianity to save himself and his family. Others whisper that he remained a secret Christian until his death. A year later, his son was later executed for being a Christian, a tragic end to the family's legacy. The grand mission, which had cost a fortune and crossed the entire globe, was deemed a failure. To avoid the shogun's wrath, Date Masamune and the Tokugawa government actively suppressed the story. Records were destroyed, and the epic journey of the Kaiko embassy was deliberately erased from the pages of official history. For nearly 250 years, the story of Hasekura Sunigaga was almost completely forgotten in Japan. It was only after Japan reopened to the world in the mid-19th century that historians, stumbling upon documents in Spanish and Italian archives, began to piece the incredible tale back together. The portrait of Hasekura in Rome, the letters he carried, and the Spanish city records all provided evidence of this lost chapter of global history. Today, Hasekura Sunigaga is seen not as a failure, but as a pioneer. He was a man who bridged worlds, a samurai diplomat who navigated complex international politics with poise and determination. His journey stands as a powerful reminder of a time when Japan looked outward, full of ambition and curiosity. It's a testament to the human spirit's desire for connection and exploration, a forgotten epic of diplomacy that dared to connect East and West long before the modern age. What can we learn from Hasekura's story? It shows us that history is not always a straight line of progress. Moments of openness can be followed by long periods of isolation. It also reveals the hidden, personal stories behind the grand narratives of empires and politics. Hasekura Sunigaga wasn't a king or a shogun, but his journey across the world is one of the most remarkable adventures of the 17th century. He was a symbol of a different, possible future for Japan, a future of global engagement that was delayed for over 2 centuries. His legacy lives on in the small towns in Spain and Italy that still celebrate his visit, and in the growing recognition of his incredible, almost unbelievable, diplomatic boy. He truly was the samurai who saw the world. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey back in time. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden histories. Let us know in the comments what other forgotten stories you'd like us to explore next. Until next time, keep exploring.